He was like done, you know, and so all of that led up to, the next couple of days he called and said, Bootsy, you should be coming to see me. And I'm like, Dad, we just had a great time, you know? And, it's like, I shouldn't be having to come to see you. You should be coming to see me, And he kept saying it. And the next few days, that's when he shot up the office.
Oh.
Yeah, that's when it really got deep.
Oh, hey everybody. What a stunning day here in Los Angeles. Absolutely gorgeous. I hope this finds you well. I am actually extra. I'm extra all the good things. And that's usually what happens when I've been in the studio making music with great musicians. And that's what I did a couple days ago, and I'm still in the afterglow of that. I've been making this album with a 24-piece big band orchestra for the last few months. And I think we're in the home stretch now. I cut a couple more songs a couple days ago, and it's a thing where I go in and I surround myself with incredible musicians and I sing live. There are no computers, there's no auto-tune, there's none of that stuff. It's just 24 incredible musicians and me singing along with them. And it's just been like getting a Z-Pack, like getting just a vitamin overload of goodness and great people, great ladies and gentlemen who are just so gifted as musicians. And for me to be able to sing live with them has just been incredible. So that's been a really cool thing. And you know what else is a cool thing? My guest on this week's Stories to Tell. I got to sit down. I had the honor and pleasure of sitting down here at my house a week ago with, I hear the word legend thrown around a little bit too loosely for my taste. But in the world of funk, Bootsy Collins is truly a legend. And I got to sit down with Bootsy and talk about his new album of the year, #1 Funkateer, which is incredible. You got to check it out. And just his career, his life. He's funny, he's charming, he's bright, he's got lots of great stories, and I just had the best time with him. So enjoy this episode. I hope you do. Subscribe to Stories to Tell, download these episodes, tell a friend, tell them to tell their friends. And right now, my guest this week on Stories to Tell, Mr. Bootsy Collins. Bootsy, what a pleasure. Cheers.
Cheers, definitely.
I'm not sober.
You're not sober?
I only just started drinking.
What?
Pretty much. I'm 61. I really only started drinking when I was about 50.
Oh my God.
So I figure my liver's had it way too good for too long,
So
and now I've got a lot of making up to
you
do.
You gotta destroy it.
But what a pleasure and what an honor to have you in my house and sitting here to be able to just hang with you for an hour is...
Man, this is a
great
beautiful setting, a beautiful vibe, and I can't wait to jump in. I don't know what the heck I'm talking about.
Yeah, you do. Well, I have a lot of stuff I want to talk to you about the past, but let's start with the present.
Okay.
Because I've spent some time with your new album, which is called Album of the Year, #1 Funkateer.
Yes. Yeah.
First album in a long time, right?
About 4 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But enough time. It's gone by.
Yes,
It was time to do something new.
Yeah.
And I, especially in the last couple of days, just sort of listening to it in preparation for my hang with you today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was listening, and I love it so much. You have to get this record. And I loved the classicness of it, but I loved how fresh it is and how modern it is.
Yeah.
And I was sitting there going, wait, I hear Earth, Wind & Fire, I hear James Brown, I hear Prince, I hear Dre, I hear all of that, right? Mm-hmm. And I was thinking about the influences or the references, maybe is a better word than influences. And then I was walking today listening to the album, and I stopped And I went, no, it's Bootsy.
Oh,
It's Bootsy.
It's a collection of all.
And I think that really says a lot about your artistry in that, I can hear, like, all of us have been influenced by people's music we love.
Exactly.
But to maintain such an individuality within a genre especially, and to just cherry pick from different vibes.
You saw that. I mean, you felt that. That's exactly the way I looked at it.
And it's such a journey, this album. So fun. It just made me feel really good.
Yeah.
So tell me what you can about what drove you to go, it's time for me to make another album? Yeah. And then how did you go about choosing your collaborators? Because you got some amazing collaborators on this record.
Yes.
Take me through the journey of this album.
Well, actually, it just started off, cutting a song here and there, getting a feeling. It wasn't like, okay, I'm gonna do an album,
Right.
I started at doing tracks and songs, and it kind of developed.
Because you have a studio at home, correct?
Yeah. Yes. And when things come to me, it's like you go down and you record it, So this stuff's kind of, I guess, it's like a build-up. And, it's like you got to get it out. It's like, what do I do? Am I just cutting songs or, just putting tracks down just for the library? Or do I really want to go at this again, like putting this out? And it ain't going to be looked at. You're just going to put it out and it's just going to be there.
Right.
So all of those things come to you, it's like, I'm going to cut the album of the year. And I put that in my head. And
that's a manifestation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because if you just think to yourself, I'm just gonna do whatever, then that's what it's gonna be.
That's what it's gonna be.
But if you go, I'm gonna make the greatest thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah. I told Patty, this is gonna be my best.
Your beautiful wife.
Yes. I said, this is gonna be my best album ever. And it's like, it's like in your head, yeah, right. But that's kind of the way I went. I wouldn't do anything less than as perfect as I can get it, and it made me feel like I was in the past and the present and the future, So, it's like I can grab things, I can do things, I don't just play bass.
Right.
This album, I wanted to create like all the different things that can be done. Mm-hmm. Like when Jimmy said something about, he hears not only guitar in his head, his horns, strings.
Yeah.
And, I was feeling all of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, you got to put this in the record. And I didn't even have a question of how am I going to do that. It just started developing. And then I would add this. And
you just approached it where you just decided to when you have a laboratory like that, really, which is what you have.
Yeah.
And there's not a label breathing down your neck. There's nobody going like this. You're not paying for studio time.
It's so much.
Freedom.
Yeah. And the way I came up was all the way different. It's like you're always under the pressure of somebody else, and I had the opportunity to just do it myself, and it felt so good, not like, see who I am, not like that.
Right.
It was more, this is my opportunity to really show how thankful and grateful I am for the people, because if it wasn't for you, who would we sell to?
Right.
And, I wanted people to feel that, it ain't just about me.
Right.
It's about you too.
You can feel it in the record.
Yeah. And so that's kind of the way I went at it, was like, it's about you, and give them the power to feel good, about themselves, even though, whatever they're going through, this music was going to help you, feel good about yourself, not just about me. Forget about that. This is about you. And, that's what the people, I felt, they needed to feel good about themselves. And I want to help with this music because that's what makes me feel good. Mm-hmm. It's this music, making this music for you, you know. And, you know, it wind up like, wow, you know. Now, I couldn't say, wow, that was some incredible thing you did. I couldn't say that. I was just trying to do my best work.
Well, I always say I feel like songs and music doesn't come from you, it comes through you.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Do you feel that way?
Yeah. We transmitters and we're receivers. I'm a receiver first.
Right.
You know, it has to come from there somewhere.
Right.
You know, and it don't matter, you know, who you say it comes from.
Right.
You know, what matters is that you received it and embraced it.
Yeah.
You know.
And I feel I'm not a religious man. I was for part of my life, but I'm not at all anymore. And I still feel this gratitude that I can be a channel for something that starts by making me feel good.
Yeah.
But then knowing that I can communicate it and put it into a form where somebody else can experience it and it makes them feel good.
It makes them feel good.
I mean, I think that I don't ever want to go too far down that road because it almost sounds a little self-congratulatory, like, look what we're able to do. It's not that at all.
Exactly.
It's that I feel so grateful.
Yes.
And I feel like a responsibility in a way.
And you want to share it.
And I want to share it.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole thing. It's like you don't want to make people feel like you're preaching to them, you're trying to tell them what to do. That's the last thing I want to do.
Exactly.
You know, and no matter how much religion I think I got or how much religion you think you got, that's cool. You can have that. You know, you can have that. But the whole thing is, you know, just be aware that I respect you. I respect your father, whoever it is.
Yeah.
You know, and you do the same with me.
Yeah.
You know, and that's really what it's all about. It's just cool. Don't be trying to force nothing on me.
Right.
You know, and you don't want nobody to try to force nothing on me.
100%.
And that to me is my music and my religion is let me have what I want to have, you know? Let me embrace what I want to embrace.
Yeah.
You know, we don't need each other telling, oh, you ain't got it because you don't have what I got.
Right.
What?
Right.
I mean, that don't even make sense.
No.
You know, but that's what we do as humans.
Yeah.
You know, but I feel like I wanted to get to the next level and I wasn't seeing it. You know, I wasn't seeing it. The only way I seen it was through my spirit. You know, and that's where I wanted to get to. You know.
Did it feel different for you in this way? Was the process of making this record, did it feel different than the other records?
Yeah, it felt like
just a different intention, like you were saying?
A different intention, more expanded intention, because, you know, it just made me feel like, you know, you're gonna walk this plank by yourself, you know, and I'm like, I'm cool with that because I've been walking the plank my whole life.
Yeah,
you know,
that's part of the gig.
Yeah, and so, you know, I felt pretty good about that because I knew I was gonna have to walk the plank and figure out, you know, different things while I'm making the music. Yeah, but I didn't worry about it. You know, like, I'm scared if I do this and if I, you know, it wasn't about that. You know,
how many of the songs began? Not to nerd out too much, but I'm curious. Because my process, like a lot of people's, is I hear music first. Lyrics come to me. I write most of my songs by myself, music and lyrics. Yeah. But I've had single-digit examples of coming up with a lyric. Right. And then putting music to it. I don't write that way. I let the music tell me what the lyric should be.
That's exactly what, to me, it should be.
So, but I'm curious, with you, does it usually start with a melody line? Does it start with a groove? Does it start with a bass line? Does it start... What is usually the process that you go, oh, shit, I got to get downstairs?
What's usually, the usual thing with me is I get a riff or I get a saying like, if it wasn't for you, who would I play to? You know, and I would take that and develop that into a song. I don't even have no music for it yet.
Right.
You know, so it's whatever comes first, you know, and I can wake up in the middle of the night and something come and I got to put it down.
Yeah, we've both learned the hard way. When you think, I'll remember this, I'll go back to sleep.
Man,
dumbest
when
thing
you do
can
that, when you do that, it's like it's gone already.
Well, it's also just turning your nose up at a gift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I can sleep later.
Yeah.
You got to put it down, even if I just sing it into my phone.
That's it right there.
Yeah, I bet if I looked at your phone, we both have like our voice notes. It's just nothing but ideas, and sometimes it's 3 seconds of just like a drum beat or a title of a song, or like you said, you know.
And then something can go across on the TV, like, oh, I like that. I like that commercial.
Yes.
You know, I like what that beat they got in the commercial.
Yes.
And then you might hum it in your recorder, your phone, and the next day, you know, that way you can remember it. Yeah. Otherwise, it'll come in and it's gone.
Yeah.
You know.
How did the collaborations come about? Did you just were they on this album? Were they generally people you knew or had worked with before? I'm really fascinated about Dave Stewart.
Yeah, it's both. Me and Dave Stewart, we did his album in 1984.
Oh, okay.
You know, so you know we've been friends since then. You know, and you know he comes up with special projects and you know gets me to do certain things, and I do the same thing with him. It's just been a few years that we hadn't did that. And
there's a track called it's called Influencers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's Dave and Snoop and Wiz Khalifa and a couple of other guests.
They're the younger ones. Who is it? I think is it Myra, Patty?
For which one is it?
For Influencers?
Myra, Phantasma's on there?
Phantasma, she's on there. Yeah, Phantasma.
That's the female.
So I try to combine.
There's something magical about that track.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I wouldn't let that track go because it was something about the bass line that wasn't right. So I kept hammering that. I mean, I got so many takes of that. You know, it's like, okay, man, the song, you know, you do so many, the song just ain't working.
Yeah.
But then the very last hour, it's like coming up with the bass line. You know, it's like, that one works. And if it works tomorrow for me, it's on, you know.
Is it that when I would imagine that you have an engineer who you work with, right?
Yeah.
But if it's just you and the engineer in your studio, and you're playing around with a bass line, and you're going, and now I'm not talking about the notes necessarily, but you're playing a line, a bass melody, for example, right? Or, I mean, it could be considered a riff, but a riff is still a melody in the bass.
Right.
How many times have you second-guessed it and thought, yeah, this isn't really working for me, and then come to realize that it's not the notes, it's the effect on the bass, or it's the tone, or it's the wrong amp, or does that happen to you frequently, or do you usually go, I know which notes are magic and which notes are not magic?
No, I definitely don't know that. I definitely don't know that. No, what it is nobody records with me when I'm recording bass. You know, I do that all myself.
Right.
And, you know, I guess since the experience of going from James Brown to George, being able to do whatever I wanted to do, until, you know, I got my own place to do what I really wanted to do. So I'm like enjoying that moment. You know, of doing whatever I want to do without any feedback.
Nobody over your shoulder.
Nobody over my shoulder. And, you know, it ain't like I'm trying to offend somebody by doing it. It's just I've gotten to the stage where...
You earned it.
Well, not only that, it just, you know, I feel better, you know, doing it and taking the responsibility if it don't work.
Right.
You know, I want the full responsibility of that, especially the bass. You know, and nobody can take the credit. You know, it goes both ways.
Yeah.
You know.
You mentioned James Brown.
Yeah.
And George Clinton, and I have to ask you a couple of history questions.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a guess that bass was not your first instrument.
No, you're right.
So you were a guitar player first.
Yeah. That's why and the reason I was a guitar player first was my brother Catfish, who was 8 years older than me, and
you guys worked together a lot.
Yeah, we started off together.
Yeah.
You know, started off the first band together, you know. And he was my daddy at home that I didn't have. So I looked up to my big brother and always wanted to do and be what he was, a musician, you know, playing in the nightclubs.
Yeah.
That's as far as I could see. I couldn't see no further than just being with my brother. You know, it wasn't like, dang, I wish I could, you know, get with James Brown or get with so-and-so. It wasn't none of that.
Really?
I just want to play with my brother.
So you didn't, when you were growing up, you didn't have those visions of yourself?
It was too far gone. That was too far, you know, for a long-haired kid, you know, in the ghetto, you know, playing with James Brown, no, that's, you know, that's too far.
It just seemed completely impossible.
Yeah. Just to get a chance to meet him was impossible.
Yeah.
You know, and so, you know, when we did get the opportunity over at King Records to meet him, and that's another story, how we got in King Records.
I want to know.
Yeah. Well, this guy named Charles Sperling, who was the A&R guy over at King Records, they were looking for a young, energetic rhythm section to play on all these different records and the artists that they had. And so he decided, wow, you know, let me get these guys over and see what they can do. And
you're still in Ohio at this point, right?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. I'm 15 years old. You know, so this is like the first encounter with James was like 1969. Right. And so I'm like, you know, 15 years old?
Yeah. And is he a hero? Is he like...
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, you know, he was so much of a hero that, you know, we can't touch that.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's a sacred thing. You know, we already know we're not going to be doing nothing with that.
Yeah.
You know, but what we didn't know was we was going to be playing for his bands and his artists. Marva Whitney, you know, they sent us out on the road with her. That was the taste of, wow, we really actually, you know, moving up, you know. So we got to play with her. We got to play with Hank Ballard till he left us out on the road, you know. I mean, that cat was, I mean, that's a whole nother, but, you know, we got a chance to experience stuff before we got with James Brown that most people didn't even know, you know.
So was it your work with those other acts that were sort of connected to him?
Yeah.
He just kept watching and seeing you guys grow, and then
he
he's
started
like,
hearing.
Okay.
He started hearing about us in the studio, and how, you know, we don't read, but the orchestra guy put music in front of us, and what we used to do, me and my brother, was listen, let it run it down, and the guy, he started liking what we came up with, you know. And at first we thought we was fooling him, like, you know, he don't know, you know, he don't know we're gonna listen to this and then we're gonna play, you know. So he would strike the whole orchestra up, you know. And
you would just lay out and just be like, or like,
act like
tweaking your stuff.
Act like we're fixing notes. And, you know, that whole thing. Me and my brother, and we'd be laughing about it, but at the same time, we were serious.
Yeah.
And then once he went through it about 3 or 4 times, striked it up, we did on it. And it's like, he came to me and said, man, I wish I could write half this y'all writing.
Yeah.
You know, and we wasn't really writing nothing. We was just playing.
Well, but you were improvising, but that's writing too.
Yeah, but, you know, we were so far away from, you know, it's mine, you know, you know, that, you know, it's just, we're so glad to be here, you know, and, you know, looking like we're actually playing what you've written. you know.
Right.
And he told me, come here, son, let me tell you something. You know, he said, you could be a great, you know, player, and you could read too. I'm gonna take some time to show you at least the chords, you know, and I want you to follow the chords and do what you want to do. And for him to say that, you know, because everybody had this big respect for this guy. He was like a James Brown, but
in the orchestra
guy, you know. And to play for him was like, I was like, wow, incredible. And so we got the opportunity to play with him, and then he worked for James Brown. So he would go back and tell James Brown how incredible we were, and we didn't have no idea that that's what was happening, or that would wind up making his decision on bringing us into his band. We had no idea.
Right.
You know.
What was the first gig with James Brown like?
Oh my God.
Were you scared, or were you just really excited?
No, we were cocky kids.
Yeah.
No, we wasn't.
You were like, let me at it.
Let me at it. And, you know, we didn't know what we were doing. We didn't know the set. You know, we didn't know what songs, how he had them arranged. But we knew his songs. Right. You know, and he said, when we said, we know, well, he knew, he said, son, I know y'all know the songs. So I'm gonna call them out, and I'm gonna say, he said, then I want y'all to hit me. And, you know, so we had been around, so we knew enough to know what he was talking about. Right. And that's what he did. He got on stage, Cold Sweat, hit it. You know, we go into the song, song in, people going crazy. He's called something out, try me, hit it. You know, so that's how we made it through it. It was kind of terrible for us because we usually know what we're doing, how we have, because we was rehearsing before we got with James. Right. You know, so we were already prepped for the meeting with James Brown, you know, because we wanted to be as tight as the James Brown band, you know. So we always practiced. So when he introduced his practice to us, we was already ready for it. Yeah. You know, and he appreciated, of course he wouldn't tell us that. Right. You know, he appreciated the part about us being so hungry for pleasing him, making him feel good, you know. And, you know, people were saying to me like, y'all should have got paid for this. And y'all should have got, we thought we had to pay him.
You just illustrated something. One of my favorite quotes of my whole life that I heard maybe in my teens was, success is when opportunity and preparation collide.
There you go.
And you just illustrated that. Yeah. You and your brother waited for the opportunity. Yeah. But you were so prepared for that when it happened.
Yeah, when it happened, it was like, you know, it wasn't like we couldn't wait for this moment. It's like that moment happened at the right time. Yeah. You know.
How long did you tour with James?
It was about, we didn't stay none, about a year. Yeah. You know.
And was there a falling out, or was it, I don't know how that relationship ended.
It wasn't really well, I guess you can say it was a falling out. The older guys put me in a situation where they knew JB treated me like a kid, like his son. And so I could pretty much get anything from James, you know, like, you know, send Bootsy over there, you know, he could do it. You know, it's like Mikey. Yeah. Let Mikey do it.
Yeah, Mikey will eat it. He'll eat anything.
That's exactly who I was.
Gotcha.
You know, so, you know, but James was, you know, he was a slick guy. You know, he knew they were putting me up to doing that stuff, you know, and I was cool. I was like, more money for, I mean, you know, it's like, we good.
Really?
No, we need this. We need rooms by ourselves. Right. We need, you know, and so they put me up to do it. I went and did it. And, you know, I knew in my soul that if he turns me down, I'm gone.
You have to leave.
I have to leave. And the other cats was like, you know, they just knew that, you know, I was going to get it. But myself, I felt like, you know, if he turns me down, I'm gonna have to go. And he turned me down. I mean, this wasn't just one time. You know, they were sending me in there every couple, 2 or 3 weeks.
Right.
You know, and James was hip to what was happening, you know, and he was like, he's told me, he said, Bootsy, I ain't going for it this time, you know. All of y'all that can't dig it, you're fired, you know, and I said, okay.
So it wasn't an angry, hard feelings thing. It was like, we
that's what happened to his band before.
Yeah.
You know, and so we knew, you know, in our hearts that this was training, you know, this is our, you know, army training, you know, and because bands at that time were always playing behind singers, you know, and the era was changing. The era was changing for the bands to come up front, even if they couldn't sing, singing, getting the girls and this, that. I mean, you know, dressing, you know, the way they wanted to. The era of it's my thing.
Yeah.
You know, he even recorded it.
Yeah.
You know, and so the band started to doing it's our thing. You know, in dressing and playing, you know, backing up from the singers, and it's like that's what was happening. And James knew it. He felt it, and we felt like at any time that he fires us or gets rid of us, it's time to go.
Yeah.
You know, because we would dress, you know, after the show, we would dress in this crazy, you know, like we had been all over in Europe, Africa. I mean, we had been everywhere. Yeah. You know, in that short time. Mm-hmm. And we got the chance to see what other people were doing. You know, over in England, you know, they were dressing, you know, they had hot pants, you know, they had, actually the disco scene was going on. And this is 1970. Yeah, wow. You know, and you know, we didn't have no idea how big that was gonna be. Yeah. You know, and until we got over there and started finding out, wow, you know, ain't it any more bands playing around here? Because where we come from, bands were everywhere. Yeah. You know, but in the time period we were there in Europe, they were into disco. And, you know, it's like, so that was a new introduction to us.
So it wasn't so much, well, I mean, I'm sure the music influenced you a little bit, but it was really the fashion and
it was
style.
The fashion.
So that's where I was leading, and I know you've been asked this question a bazillion times, but indulge me. So was it during your tour and working with James Brown that you started to become the first version of who you became in terms of your style and your...
I wouldn't say that was the first.
So it was even before that?
It was when I was playing with my brother.
Really?
Yeah, it started when I...
What made you go, I'm going to do some different shit?
Well, we was growing up in that era where, you know, you had Elvis, you had Sly. I mean, these people were like dressing. I mean, they were sharp. Yeah. You know, and, you know, we were all of us wanted to be sharp. That meant more than making money. Yeah. You know, we gotta be sharp. We hit that stage. And see, when we got with James Brown, it just upped everything. It's like, now we can be sharp. You know, but you can't be sharp on James Brown's stage unless you're wearing his suits. Right. You know, so we knew that after the shows, we would put our own crazy stuff
to go out and have fun.
He didn't want us to go out and have fun. The whole thing was, when we got finished with the show, he made sure we had things to do, like rehearse. Oh, wow. Go to the studio and record Sex Machine. I mean,
after a show?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God.
He made sure he kept us busy because we were young and foolish, you know, and we knew it, and we were taunting that. You know, it was like, and I mean, you know, I mean, that's just the way we were. And he put up with it as much as he could, you know, without looking like he was wimping out. Right. You know, with all the other people, you know, because the older crowd that was there, you know, they were dependent on making that check. Yeah. You know, and making that money. We didn't care. Wasn't there long enough to even care. We've been broke, you know, the whole time. Yeah. So, you know, to get with James, and then he cut our salary off, or to fine us, that wasn't gonna work.
Right.
You know, and he started feeling that, and he started finding that out, that no matter how many times he do that, it did.
That we have to explain, which I ended up doing that to my band as a joke. Because once they understood what that meant, I would do it to them on the slightest thing, just to make them laugh.
Right.
You know,
right.
Because really, what I would always do is I'd say, you know, hey, to the bass player, hey, I think you're playing that. That's an F sharp. It's not an F natural or whatever. I was, you know, I always want to be surrounded by people I love to hang out with and treat people with respect and everything. But every once in a while, when somebody would make a mistake, I'd look at them and go like this. So what that means is this was $5 for every time.
That's right.
And this is what the amount that your salary was going to be deducted that night.
Right.
So if James Brown went like this, you were making no money that night. And if he just did this, you were down $5.
Right.
And it was for every mistake that he thought somebody made, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Which is hilarious.
And you know, it's like, hilarious as it was, it worked in another way on me. You know, it was like, you know, when he did that, it was like, you know, okay, so what? You know, so
but
what?
he didn't think it was hilarious.
Oh, no.
That's what I'm saying. And I think
No.
that's what you're saying. Like, we can laugh about it now.
Yeah, but
he took that shit very seriously.
It was serious. I mean, you know, he knew that he had us by the balls when he did that.
Yeah.
You know, and then he found out we just didn't care. You know, because then we started doing drugs on his set. Mm-hmm. And he really, you know, he was like, you know, first of all, he started blaming me for getting the other guys to be involved too. And that wasn't true on his stage, on his set. I knew better than to get high on his set, you know, because how you gonna follow all the things, you know, and you toe up?
Yeah.
I mean, you know.
Exactly. So,
you know, I was, you know, cocky, but I wasn't, you know, crazy.
You were a pro.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were being a pro.
I mean, I couldn't say I was a pro then, but I grew to be.
Yeah.
You know, but you know, he was just, you know, doing it anyway. And I was like, if he's gonna do that anyway, then I'm just gonna get toe up.
Right.
You know? And that's what I did, you know. And for me, you know, it was like one of the best things I could have ever did, because it got him thinking as well, you know, about himself and what he was doing, what he was really doing, because he would never face that.
Right.
You know, because he thought that was a part, which it was a part of his whole thing, you know.
You just made me think of a question I've never thought, let alone asked anybody.
Yeah.
And there's no way to know. I don't expect an answer because we don't know.
Right.
But your opinion will be one of the more educated opinions about this.
Wow.
Do you think? I think about James Brown, who I certainly admired greatly.
Yeah.
And you think about it, and there are other examples, Chuck Berry, but when I think of James Brown, do you think he enjoyed any of his success?
Yeah.
He did? Did he have fun?
I don't know about fun. Well, yeah, he did have fun.
He did?
Yeah, he did.
You can understand how, I'm sitting here thinking about him, like, everything that I've seen and read and heard, he just seemed like he was obsessed with as much perfection.
And with himself
and
as
with
well.
himself. Mm-hmm. And brilliant talent.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
But I don't get a sense that he was having fun. But I would love for you to say that I'm wrong about that.
75% business, 25% music. So I gauge it like that.
Gotcha.
You know, his fun was 25%. His business was 75%. We didn't care about the business.
Right.
At all.
Right.
You know, it was 100% music or nothing at all.
Right.
You know, and that was...
So that was maybe the collision of...
That was it.
That ended it.
That's it.
Wow.
You know, that was it. It's just, you know, when I look back on it, you know, it's like, it was funny, especially when Mike Judge, did that Tales of the Tour Bus.
Yeah.
Have you seen any of that? See, we didn't know that he was going to animate that. He didn't tell us.
Yeah.
You know, we just came to the interviews. We did all the interviews, and everything we did, he put in animation. When it came out, he didn't tell us.
Yeah.
When it came out, they started seeing it on TV, and people was calling, dying, laughing.
Yeah, it was hilarious.
You know? And then when I saw it, I couldn't take it.
Yeah.
I said, I laugh like that? I mean, you know, I couldn't believe it, man. I couldn't believe it. But it was so much fun that I can tell that he enjoyed doing that.
Oh, good.
You know? And yeah, I mean, even today, if you put that thing on, I'm gonna be on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, because, you know, it wasn't something we planned.
Right.
It's just the way it happened.
Yeah.
You know, him coming outside, you know, and wanting a drink of the, you know, it's like, hey, James, you don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and he actually did it.
Yeah.
You know, and it was like, wow. You know, I didn't know what to do. I was, you know, I had it. I didn't know whether to give it to him or not, you know. It's like, give it to him. Yeah, give it to him. You know, let's see how he handles that. You know.
Well, that's a side that we never saw before.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how long between leaving James Brown's band and working with George?
Before George? Actually, it wasn't even a year. It was like in '72. So it was the end of '70, going into '71. No, actually, we went into '71 because we went over to Europe, came back from Europe, and did the what's that in New York? What's the supper club? What is the name of that? Yeah, I know you know it. God, dog, we played there. Was supposed to play there for 2 weeks, and we had been over in Africa and came back. And first of all, we had some trouble over in Africa because they put me up to it again.
Oh.
You know, over in Africa in front of the African president. You know, and I was stupid enough to do it. You know,
Yeah, that was probably bad timing.
that was very bad timing. You know, but again, I'm Mikey.
Yeah.
So
You guys want me to do it tonight again? Okay, I guess I will. Maybe not in front of the African president.
But when James got the note of what we were demanding, he just shook his head, took it over there to the president, and said, "Can you believe what these guys?" He let him read it, and you know, I was like, and
You
then,
must
and
have just been like, oh, shit.
yeah, and the fingers pointed right at me, you know, and I'm like, you know, but wasn't nothing he can do because we over in Africa, you know,
Right.
we the band, so he had to come up with it. You know, it was like him being forced in front of not only his people,
Yeah.
but the African people too. And I know he wasn't gonna ever live that down.
Yeah.
You know, so when we got back,
You're lucky you guys got airplane tickets home.
we were lucky we got, you know, we were alive.
Yeah.
You know, it's like that plane's going down.
Yeah.
You know.
And
But-
so then that was it.
Yeah.
And-
Well, we got home from that, you know, from that tour.
And you still did more gigs with him?
Yeah. Well, this was the actual last. This was the last straw.
Oh, okay.
What was the name of that place? God, come on, I know you know what it is.
I don't know what you're talking
about. It's kind of like the Cherry Hill Supper Club, but it's really big in New York. Dang on it. Well, anyway, we played 2 weeks there. Supposed to play 2 weeks, and so we got through a week. And James's original crew came back to me again. You gotta go ask them for it, because one of the main members had saw James up in the hotel with money all across the bed, and he was bragging on what
Right.
he does and what he do and how much money he makes, and that made it back to this person that always came down and said, "Bootsy,
Yep.
you gotta, because, you ought to seen all that money." And didn't nobody really understand that, that wasn't what was pushing me.
Right.
You know?
Right.
And I just love this organization that we are in. You know, why mess with it?
Yeah.
You know?
Which is really kind of ironic if you think about it, that of all the people that they chose, that everybody voted to be the mouthpiece.
Mikey.
That you turned out to be Mikey when you're like, why do you want me to? I'm happy. I don't want, and I'm good.
I actually told them that. And it went
but
right over their head.
They probably felt that, so like you said, they sensed an affection, I guess, he had for you that
they could.
You still had the best, you were the best option to get it done.
Yeah, yeah.
But after the 10th time or something,
right.
You would think, you would go like, guys, I've done it 10 times. He's not buying it.
They were going to keep doing it until, you know, the axe.
Right.
You know, so we found out, like, after a week into the gig, you know, his whole thing then was, okay, I'm going to have to cut your salary. You know?
Okay. So he kept, like, upping the, like, it was a war.
Especially after we came back from Africa.
I got it.
So, you know, it's like, okay, I'm going to pay these mugs back. You know, they think they did that to me over there.
Yeah.
You know, I'm going to get them now.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, half salary. And, you know, so then they talked me into going in there, you know, and telling them we ain't playing, you know, this next week. We ain't playing unless you give us all our salary. You know, and I went in there and told him that, you know.
And he went, well, it was nice knowing you.
Yeah, he was very sad. Bootsy, God, Doug, Bootsy, you do everything they tell you. Uh-huh. You know, he said, can't you see what they're doing? Yeah. I mean, he called it out, you know, and I couldn't say, or I wouldn't say, yeah, they did put me up to it.
Right.
You know,
because you had to be the team. You had to be part of the team.
Yes. Yeah.
Did you hang with him after that? Did you?
You mean after that?
Yeah.
Not really. No.
See, did you ever, like, I wondered, like, I fantasized that, you know, 10, 15 years later, you're somewhere and he's there in a restaurant or something.
Yeah, we did.
Oh, you did? Okay.
Yeah. Oh, we turned out to be real cool.
Okay, that's what I thought.
Yeah. But I thought you meant, you know, like...
No. That was it for that.
Right. That was totally
But then you just loved each other, like, just as human beings beyond that, right?
Yeah. And like... I think, too, because we knew where each one of us was coming from.
Yeah.
And then when he had to come to a show that I was playing in his hometown,
mm-hmm.
and he didn't want to come because we were hot.
Right.
You know, he didn't want to come, and he didn't want to, you know, his I told you so wasn't working. You know, I tried to tell you, none of that was working. You know, we were on top.
Right.
And, you know, he had to come see us. And, you know, I had Fred Wesley and Maceo was playing with me now, not James Brown.
Yeah.
And so, you know, he was really hurt by that, and he didn't really know how to respond. And so, you know, after a couple of years went by, you know, I called him on the phone, and we started talking about recording a song together.
Mm-hmm.
You know, actually, George, you know, I wanted George to meet him, and we all...
They didn't know each other?
No.
George Clinton and James Brown didn't know each other?
I mean, they knew of each other.
Right, but they'd never run into each other.
I mean, George is tripping.
Yeah.
You know, and James is straight ahead business. You know, so I knew that they wouldn't work well together, you know, because they both think they're, you know, number one.
Yeah.
You know, so, you know, it's like, how am I going to do this? You know, so I said, I'll be in the middle and I'll just keep everything cool, you know. So when James gets to the studio, we've been there waiting on him, you know. So James gets to the studio, he got his entourage, he got his chick, you know, and he comes in and he slides across the floor, you know, do this thing like I'm clean, you know. And it's like, okay, all right, okay. Well, you know, what you gonna do on the track, you know? Well, I'll tell you, son, you know, y'all gotta sign this right here. He had the studio's, what do you call that, log sheet?
You know, track sheets or the letterhead?
Track sheet,
that
was one.
Yeah.
It was like, I want y'all to sign this. I'm gonna get 75%, and y'all split 25. And we did the song. You know, all we wanted you to do is just say something on it. You know.
Yeah.
He wouldn't do nothing.
Yeah.
You know, I still got the 2-inch tape. You know, and I still got the track sheet.
Yeah.
We all signed it, and he didn't want to be a part of it.
Wow.
You know? And then he hated George because he felt like George stole me from him. You know, he stole, you know, Fred Wesley, Maceo, Kush,
His whole
you know,
crew.
So he was like done, you know, and so all of that led up to, you know, the next couple of days he called and said, Bootsy, you know, you should be coming to see me. And I'm like, Dad, we just had a great time, you know? And, you know, it's like, you know, I shouldn't be having to come to see you. You should be coming to see me, you know? And he kept saying it. And the next few days, that's when he shot up the office.
Oh.
Yeah, that's when it really got deep.
So it was, yeah.
I mean, it was deeper than I even thought.
Yeah.
You know.
There was just it sounds like a talk of a build-up.
Yeah, and you said, does he ever have fun? He was really not having no fun.
Yeah.
You know, when I first got there, he was having some fun because he got rid of the old, brought in the new, so he had a little, you know.
But it sounds like he just sort of got overtaken by personal insecurity and resentment.
That, and he couldn't trust nobody.
Yeah.
You know, so I understood that part of it, you know. So, you know, that was a whole deep, it was just a deep mess.
When I think about your career and I think about the longevity of your career and the diversity of your career, like hearing that story and then thinking about, so I want to ask you about your involvement in something, but I'll tell you a quick story on my end.
Yeah.
So this is like a couple years ago. I'm having dinner at a place in on Sunset called Bird Street.
Okay.
It's this cool restaurant, and I'm there with my wife and some friends, and we had a really nice dinner, and we're leaving, and we're almost at the door to get in the elevator to leave.
Yeah.
And the owner comes running over, and he says, "Hey, Richard, I know you're leaving, but there's someone else having dinner here, and he would really love to meet you and say hello to you."
Wow.
And I said, "Oh, okay." And I thought it was just somebody who liked what I do, you know, a fan or something. So I was like, "Yeah, sure." So he walks me around the corner, and as I go around the corner, I see this guy stand up, and my brain goes, "That's Bruno Mars."
Oh, wow.
And I'm thinking, it can't be, I'm not computing. I'm thinking, wow, that's Bruno Mars, not thinking that that's who he's taking me to see.
Right.
And Bruno comes over and he gives me the biggest hug. And we sit there and talk for a while. And I think that when somebody asks me this question, they say, whenever I'm doing an interview and somebody says, who do you think is the person, the talent of our time?
Yeah.
I don't think that there's anybody on the planet more talented than Bruno Mars.
You got that right.
And I've been saying it for years and years.
Yeah.
Come to meet him, and he's such a gentle, sweet soul and funny. And we text each other every once in a while now. And we keep threatening to get together to actually have dinner. And but I feel embarrassed that until recently I didn't know. I knew that you guys had worked together, but I didn't know that you came up with the name Silk Sonic. Please tell me how that happened.
Oh, man. Well, you know, first of all, you know, Babyface, right?
Yeah, of course.
And, you know, I came up, you know, I was good at coming up with names. You know, if I see you and you remind me of something or somebody.
That's true. I mean, you are, talk about, and I know you're at least 2 for 2 between naming Babyface and Silk Sonic. That's all you need. You don't need more than that, but I bet you've done
it's a lot of them that never rose to that, you know, that fame thing, but that was what I did, you know, and, you know, I loved it. It was funny. Yeah. You know, because every time I did that, it stuck. Yeah. You know, for some reason it stuck. And it's funny you mentioned Bruno because, you know, we just came from Vegas. Yeah. And he invited us down to his place. Yeah. What is it, Pinky Ring? Yeah. You know, we went down and had a blast. Nice. And then the very next day, texted him and told him just about the exact thing you just said about him being the void, taking up that void.
He's the guy.
He is,
He's the guy, and on every level. Like, I think I might have even said to him that night, because I'd had a martini or two.
Yeah.
I told him how much I loved him. And I have talked publicly about that for the last, I don't know how many years, since he's become a star, ever since he became a star.
Yeah.
And he's looked at me and he said, I know you have, because it's gotten back to me. He said, I've had people tell me that you've said really, really beautiful things about me, and I'm really grateful and everything. And he's such a charming, humble guy, for as gifted as he is. But I said to him that night, I really should hate you, because no one should be allowed to be that talented.
Yeah.
It's not just that he's not a great singer. He's like my favorite singer.
Yeah. Wow.
And his playing, his guitar playing. He's a great drummer. He's an amazing dancer. He's an incredible songwriter. He's one of the greatest performers.
Yes.
He is and he's funny. You put him in a skit on SNL, he's going to crush it.
Yes.
He's so gifted that I feel like he's a little annoying.
Yeah. I
like,
see that.
nobody should be allowed to be that talented.
Yeah. But he's so dedicated to what he does.
Yeah.
And there's no really distraction when he's in that, as far as when he gets down to really doing a song or doing music, there's no distraction.
Yeah.
He's just dedicated to that, what he's doing, and I just had another feeling for him, because I know the pressure that he got to be going through.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to be close with him, and him saying, not in a whole lot of words, but in a few words, how great it is, but also how deep it is. And he don't have nobody to talk to about it that, And
well, you're that for him.
Well, kind of, but, it's like he don't trust nobody.
Yeah.
And then that made me think about James.
Right.
It don't get no.
Right.
It's like when you like that, it's like you have to be so careful and cautious. He know he's, good at everything, but when you say great, that hits him, I think, a little different.
Yeah.
A little different, because he grew up on all these greats.
Yeah.
And it's hard to put himself in the greatness.
But he really has surpassed pretty much all of them, almost all of them.
Yes.
The other thing about Bruno that is so unique, I think, is that to be not just as gifted and talented as he is, but to have had the amount of success he's had.
Yes.
And he's really the only powerhouse superstar I can think of who I basically don't know anything about. He's not on social media.
Right.
He's not tweeting.
Yeah.
He's not posting stuff. I mean, he's got people who post
doing it.
Very curated, very careful image stuff.
Yeah.
He doesn't do interviews hardly ever.
Right.
You don't see him. I don't know what he has for breakfast.
Yeah.
I don't know, what his thoughts are on manifestation.
Yes. Yeah.
We pretty much everyone else in show business.
Yeah.
Over time, it's gotten more and more and more, and I'm certainly guilty of it, where you just follow that path and you're like, oh, well, these 17 people want to interview me. I guess I'm promoting something, so I'm going to go do it.
Right.
I don't know who made that decision for Bruno, if it just came to him himself, but his lack of accessibility, I really admire almost as much as I admire his talent.
Well, I'm pretty sure that he came up with that because he studied.
Yeah.
I mean, he studied like no other, and all of the good things he really studied real hard.
Yeah.
And bits and pieces,
I'm just saying, like, in terms of publicity,
Yeah.
Bruno Mars makes Prince look like he was a loudmouth.
Yes.
He makes Bruno Mars makes Prince look like he was, a Kardashian, practically. You know what I mean? And Prince was careful.
Yeah.
But Prince was out there. If I go on YouTube, I can see plenty of Prince interviews. There's hardly anything on Bruno. Bruno keeps his private life private. That's really admirable.
That's Bruno.
Yeah.
And when I say he studied very well, just like you just said about Prince, that's what made him bag up from that. You know, if I bag away when I'm that hot, I will last longer.
Totally.
And because everybody wants to know.
And it's true. And when he does, and he doesn't put out music a lot, but when he does, it's an event.
It's the bomb.
It's an event, and it's always great.
Yes.
Like when I first heard the duet with Lady Gaga, I was a little like, oh, he's doing a duet with Lady Gaga? Okay. Mm-hmm. And that song actually took me a couple listens. I liked it.
To get to it, yeah.
But then like the third or fourth time I listened to it, I was like, wow, this is deep. And I hear his hands all over it. You know, I hear, no disrespect to her, because I think she obviously was a great collaborator, but man, he's just so gifted.
No, anything that he's doing, his hands are all over it.
I don't want to keep you too long, but I have a couple more questions for you. And this is one I'm personally really curious about.
Yeah.
Listening to not just this album, but particularly this album.
Okay.
Of yours, and hearing you talk about the creation of it and what your intentions were. It feels like your vibe has been, for as long as I've known who you are, full of positivity, togetherness, love.
Yeah.
And I wonder, I don't know that we've ever been in a more divided,
unstable,
angry time, especially in this country right now, in the last few years, but especially now.
Right.
And for you to drop an album like this now, and I wonder, it's a two-part question. How much of that, seeing that and knowing that that's where we're at, fueled the concepts and the vibe on this album? And also, how do you, as a man, maintain positivity when you're surrounded by negativity?
I've always had to do it. I mean, when you got people relying on you, they get negative. I mean, they come at you.
Yeah.
And so I've been around that and going through that all my life, so it's kind of like a chance I get to have a relief period where I give myself a break. It's like, it's all about, for me now, to help, in the honest way I can, and that's through the music, and that's what makes me feel good. I want to see you having a good time, not a bad time,
right.
And if I didn't have nothing else to stick to, that's what I would stick to. I hate to see you having a bad time. I mean,
Wow, what a great philosophy.
I mean,
I just don't want to see anybody having a bad time.
Yeah, I mean, and it's as simple as that, but you have to get to that place to be stable and strong and be able to stand there, when it's going all downhill for you, and I've been at those points. Now, it didn't make a difference whether it was going up or down, because that's where the world is at anyway, so I would fit in that area. But if I could just stand a little longer, maybe I can help 2 or 3 people, get through it, and so that's what kind of empowers me, is to know that you brought a few people together. Because the ones that's out there talking about, I am the one, they don't know what the one is.
Right.
The one is all of us.
Yeah.
Together. And if you know what the one is, show it. Don't just talk about it.
Right.
So what I want to do is just show, because the talent I got don't match today's talent. They got a whole next level. a whole lot of notes, a whole lot of this, a whole lot of that. And so, you know.
Well, I would just say it's different. You're the way you're describing it, if I may.
Yeah.
You're describing it in a way that seems like it's elevated above what you're capable of, and I would disagree with that.
Well, not that it's elevated above. It's just next level, meaning they can do so much with it. Not that they're so great. It's just they can do, you know, where I do one note, they can do 25.
Right.
You know.
You don't always need 25. Sometimes just one.
But I mean, that's where the thinking is now, that's great. You know, it's like, oh, you play 2 notes, he can play 25. Check this out. Right. You know. And so that's what makes people great now, not the actual greatness that you were just talking about. Mm-hmm. You know, numbers count, you know, but the thing that's wrong with that, my whole thing is numbers can't count. People do.
Yeah.
And when you go in it looking at that part of it, numbers ain't got nothing to do with this feeling.
No.
You know, so it's about people count, you know, not the numbers.
It's like I look at, and again, I'm not throwing any shade, but there are guitar players who are notorious and successful for playing a million notes, right?
Yeah.
And then you look at, like, one of my favorite guitar solos I ever heard in my life was Prince's solo at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, playing While My Guitar Gently.
I just talked to somebody about that,
Right?
Yeah, you're right.
And if you go watch that, because he could do that too. Right. He could play 25 notes as opposed to 1. Yeah. He had the capability as a musician to do that.
Right. Right.
But he always played the song. He always played to the song.
What the song was.
And when the rumor is, or the legend is, that he didn't really know, he'd never rehearsed it.
Right.
He was called in kind of last minute.
Yeah.
And if it's on YouTube, you got to see. If you haven't seen Prince play at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Tom Petty and Jeff Lynne and this huge band honoring George Harrison. George Harrison's son's in the band.
Yes. Yeah.
And at the end, there's all these great solos and great musical moments. And at the very end, when it just vamps out, Prince walks out and just starts playing this solo. And it's his choices.
Yeah.
The feel, it moved me.
Yes.
He moved me with what he played.
Yes.
And he did it countless times. And there are guitar players who have the chops to do all the flash.
They don't have that.
But they don't have, they're not going to move us. You know?
Yeah. Well, that's what we're dealing with as far as old, present, and future.
Yeah.
You know, because it's going to go further with the future of notes.
Yeah.
It's just going to go up.
Yeah.
You know, so if you got a problem with somebody playing a whole lot of notes, you're going to really be in trouble.
All right, well, I have a last question, and then I have a gift for you.
Oh, my God.
But I feel like, if it's okay with you, and you can say, you both can say no, but I have a question that I'm dying to ask you, but I feel like I want Patty here for this question. Patty, can you come over here for this question? Come and join me.
She been waiting. She can't wait.
Because it's really a question for both of you, because I'm curious to see. I'm going to ask you the question.
Okay.
And I want your answer. Okay. And then I'm going to look at her and see if your answer is absolutely truthful.
Oh, Lord.
Okay, you ready?
Throw me under the bus.
Please tell me, is there ever a time when you're just in a robe and slippers chilling, watching Netflix?
Actually, we just did that.
We just did that. We had pajama day yesterday.
So are you, okay, but when it's pajama day, is it not like my pajama day? I feel like all of your choices in terms of your style, like even if it's boxer shorts, your boxer shorts are going to be flash. They're going to be badass.
No, I'm junkyard dog when it comes to, chilling and,
So there's a version of you that is absolutely super, just average chill.
Yeah.
I'm so relieved.
Yeah.
And I'll say it's taken a while to get here to this point, but he really knows how to be William now.
Oh,
so he can be
that's
William.
A beautiful thing to say.
Bootsy.
I figured it out.
And I call him William. to make
Well,
sure that
I'm going to guess that how he came to that is standing next to you.
Yeah.
we helped each other.
Also, I want to commend, but the other reason I wanted you to come over here is because in doing some of my homework, I know about your charitable endeavors.
Yeah.
And I just want to raise what's left of my glass to you both because you do such beautiful things in the world.
Thank you so
So
much.
cheers to you.
Appreciate that.
Funk, not fight. We help calm the
Funk,
violence.
not fight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
we
If
help-
aliens landed tonight
Yeah.
and they asked you, what is funk? What would your answer be?
Funk is, what was my
making something out
funk
of,
is making something out of nothing.
There you go.
That's what we do. That's what we've been doing since the beginning.
Yeah.
You know, and it's grown all the
Thank
way
you,
up.
Patty.
It's grown all the way up to now. But for whatever reasons, funk was not accepted.
Yeah.
You know, and what you were saying about Prince, he just came out and stepped up and got funky. Yeah. You know, he didn't study. He didn't, he didn't read nothing.
He just was.
That's what funk is.
Yeah.
Making something
Out of nothing.
out of nothing.
Yeah.
You know, and that's exactly what when you were saying that, I was saying to myself,
That's what funk is.
That's funk.
So I end every episode with a gift. I like to give a gift to my guests.
Oh, wow.
And it's the gift of vinyl. I'm going to guess you still have some kind of a turntable in Ohio.
Yes.
And so I was thinking, you were a really tricky. It was tricky for you. So I thought about it because I thought, first of all, I just had a feeling like you probably have a pretty great vinyl collection or music collection. I'm guessing. So then I thought, so I looked something up. This is actually it's going to be more of a funny gift than a cool gift.
Okay.
I found a copy of what was the #1 album in America the day you were born.
Oh my.
Do you know what was #1 on the day you were born? 1951, right?
1951. Yeah.
You ready? It's not even an album. These are 10-inch records. It's an album it's Mario Lanza Sings Christmas Song.
Oh, come on.
I found this on eBay. And I had it rush delivered here. Check this out, camera. These are, first of all,
It's got how many?
It's got, check it out. It's like side 1, side 2, side 3, side 4.
Good Lord.
It's 4 discs.
Wow. RCA.
RCA Victor, and not bendable vinyl.
Right.
The kind of vinyl you throw up and shoot and right?
Yes.
Breaks into a million pieces. Pull!
Girl.
Right? So you can do whatever. You can either, I don't even know if you can, I think it's still 33.
I was going to say, is it playable?
I think it's still playable at 33. If it's not, you can use it to, for target practice or whatever. But
of you.
That's all I wanted. Wow. That was the #1. That was Billboard's #1 album the day you were born.
Oh man!
On the day you were born.
1951. Wow. October 26th.
October, yeah.
Wow.
Bootsy, what a pleasure. You're such a beautiful spirit and such a gift to us, and it was my honor.
I look at Richard like, the world is as it is, and we got a voice.
Yeah.
Not only do we have a voice, we can act on what our voice is talking about. And it's up to us.
Yeah.
It's up to us. We can't depend on nobody else.
No.
It's up to us to get people to feel good about themselves again.
Yeah.
And so, that's going to be the hardest thing that we have to do. We can, sit and interview and do this, and I can go play and do this and put records out, and but let us not forget that everybody is going through it. It's the ones that you might not even think of, like what comes to mind is Robin Williams.
Yeah.
I mean, who would have thought?
Right.
Who would have thought? And then all of a sudden, Chris Farley.
Yeah.
Who would have thought?
Yeah.
And
Chris Cornell.
Yes.
The list goes on and on.
Just before Chris did what he did, I was talking to Patty about going to see him and sitting down and just vibing with him. You know, not telling him what to do, just vibing with him. And the next few days, he was gone.
Yeah.
You know, so we have to move on these things, not with a urgency, but at our own speed. We have to find our own speed, and we have to get that vibe out.
Yeah.
You know, and anytime you're out, let that vibe flow.
Well, you know, thank you for your career of music, but particularly this new album.
Oh, man.
Album of the year, #1 Funkateer. You have to hear this album.
Wow.
It's really, really, it made me so happy.
Yeah.
I asked, somebody asked me that question recently in an interview. They said, is there a song that always makes you, that can take you from a bad mood into a good mood? And my first answer is always September by Earth, Wind & Fire.
Right.
I said, if you can be, no matter what state you're in, if you hear September by Earth, Wind & Fire, you're going to be, even for 2 minutes, you're going to go like this, you're going to feel a little better.
Yes.
And now I can add this album to it because it just made me so happy. I was smiling. When I'm walking around, I've been hiking to it.
And a lot of times you don't even know you're smiling.
No, I'm just like, it just made me feel good. So mission accomplished, at least in this Chicago boy.
Yeah, well that's, you know, that to me is what's needed now.
Yeah.
You know, and it's you know, it's what pushes and inspires me. And, you know, it didn't take a lot to inspire me, but, you know, it's like now the older you get, you know, it takes more and more and more to inspire you.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, well, I ain't got it, I ain't made it yet, you know, and then when I did make it, you know, I fell off, and, you know, it's like, okay, all that happened, but you should have learned from there.
Yeah.
You know, now what you gonna do? And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna make people happy. You know?
I love it.
All right.
Thank you, brother.
Richard, thank you.
Real pleasure.
Oh, man.